We have numerous clients now whose pensions are in the high six figures, low seven figures perhaps, who are now getting frankly decimated from a residential nil rate band perspective, each providing a level of £175,000 per person being removed. For a married couple, that's £350,000 worth of inheritance tax freedom that they would have. So we're dealing a lot with clients from a preventative position.
Hello and welcome back to the Private Client Podcast. My name is Chami. I'm an independent financial advisor and director at Glance IFA and co-founder of the Private Client Network. We're a networking group for private client professionals trying to close the gap between our various professions in order to increase our collective knowledge, improve the service to our clients, and of course, grow our respective businesses. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking to Stewart Campbell, private client solicitor at JMW, and city host of our Private Client Network's Manchester events. Stewart, thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome, Charlie. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to it and hopefully having a good, interesting conversation with you.
Yeah, it's cool. And I was looking back at when we started the Manchester events, which was quite a while ago now, and I think you were at that very first one. And I thought you were sort of this was a few years ago now, and I thought you were well into your career. And I remember being surprised when you said you were a trainee at the time. And I remember being very impressed that you were putting yourself out there at that type of an event.
Yeah. I was there, I think it was around three and a half years ago now. So I've been qualified now for just over 3 years. And if I'm honest with you, that event itself was probably the first big private client-esque event I'd actually attended.
I feel honored.
Yeah, I was actually stepping in for one of my colleagues who, for whatever reason, couldn't attend. And I'm always the first to put my hand up and join an event, especially one that I thought would be relevant and beneficial. And if I'm honest with you, I think I've been to every single event since.
Excellent. Good to hear. Before we dig into that, I always like to sort of go back a little bit to the beginning. So if you don't mind, how did you get into law? Like, why did you study it? Why did you sort of want to get into it sort of back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. And for me personally, from a young age, a lot of my family, a lot of my friends' parents were solicitors, barristers, and always from those kind of had an interest in the legal profession, always within the remit of a job that I may have considered later down the line. And if I'm honest with you, I studied English, studied history, enjoyed the
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I always quite enjoyed being able to go back, look through literature, debate, sort of create my own arguments. So it seemed quite a natural fit in reality, especially when you go on to look at university degrees. It was really a toss-up for me between history and law, to be honest.
So did you so if you studied that, did you then do a conversion course? Is that how it works? Like is that the process? Convert a degree into a law degree?
Yeah. So that was really my decision, realistically, at the age of 18, was whether I do maybe a history degree and then later down the line do a conversion, a GDL, to then convert into law, or whether I go down the path of a straight law degree. So I actually decided upon the latter, to be honest with you, a little bit on the practical terms, but also it seemed to me to be both a sensible decision, and also I enjoy the history of law. I enjoy the kind of the mechanics itself. So it seemed a natural fit for me to do that at university and then progress on to law school, which I did in Chester, actually, which was quite a nice rural location.
And then, so you graduate, you qualify as a solicitor, and you're, doing that, the rounds, trying to get, like all solicitors or aspiring solicitors do, trying to get that first sort of step on the doorstep. How did that go? The application process, what was that like?
Yeah, so it was quite intensive, I'm honest with you, Charlie. So during my last probably 2 or 3 months of law school, I started sending applications to local law firms, especially in the Liverpool area. I did a few interviews, went through a few agencies to try and get an initial interview, try and get a little bit of work. I eventually landed an interview with Slater and Gordon,
Yeah.
working in it was the road traffic accident team initially, in doing personal injury,
Mhm.
which was quite a into the fire, shall we say. It was very, very interesting, very hard work, very, especially at that age, I was 22,
Yeah.
stepping in. But no, it was incredibly useful, incredibly fruitful for me. But the application process, you're certainly fighting with hundreds, if not thousands, of people for, frankly, a handful of, even at that point, paralegal roles. So I
Yeah.
found the process quite tough, to be honest with you, Charlie.
I don't think I've heard anyone say anything different to that.
No,
Like
no.
everyone talks about how challenging that is.
Mm.
Um, Trying to get a training contract, even trying to get into any law firm, it's really,
Yeah.
I do think it's just one of those careers that is just very, very appealing to a large number of people.
Mm.
And there's more people, I think, wanting to have a career in law than there is maybe spaces for them. So I think everyone, from what I can tell, has a real challenge getting in. So, okay, so you're at Slater and Gordon, paralegal position, did that for almost a year,
Yeah.
glancing at LinkedIn. Um, what was that? So that was, I mean, you must have learned a lot. I mean, I think they do like high volume of work. So,
Yeah, yeah, it was quite low value road traffic accident work. So it was certainly high volume, sort of quick turnaround, um, a case list of 150, 200 active files at any one time.
wow,
Yeah,
that's
first role in
intense.
the profession. Absolutely, absolutely. But it was a fantastic sink or swim opportunity. I think a lot of law firms do give to paralegals and to sort of younger members of the team. I mean, I was dealing with some solicitors at the time who had obviously purview over the matters, fantastic people to work under, fantastic people to learn from. But for me, it maybe wasn't quite the area that I was attaining for and one that I wanted to eventually qualify into. So, as you say, I stayed there for around a year, great experience. But then JMW both came knocking, and I also reached out to them, and I've been here now for eight. One of my colleagues actually earlier today said eight and a bit years. So
Yes, good.
one of the longest serving in the private wealth team, which is a nice feeling. But I do still remember the first day, and it's
Did you,
quite
so
a great
when
time.
you joined JMW, was it a training contract to start with? Is that how it always starts, or is it straight in because you'd had experience before?
Yeah, so it really depends on the person. It really depends on how you're entering the firm itself. So I initially moved into a paralegal role
Yeah.
with the intention to then apply for a training contract later down the line. The reason for that personally was I think we touched upon a bit earlier, on if I'm honest with you, the numbers realistically. So JMW generally take on between 20 and 25 trainees, which in the general legal market is quite high.
Hmm.
But the application process, there's usually in the high hundreds, if not the 1,000 or so people
God,
applying
it's
for
a lot.
those roles. So it was from my perspective, I thought, let's join the firm as a paralegal. It was actually within the business crime department initially, doing white collar crime work, which was fantastic, if I'm honest with you, quite challenging and certainly fast paced. But I thought that would give me uh, a good setup
Is
for
that like
a
fraud
solid
type
application.
stuff? Is that,
Yes, yeah. So it was fraud. It was in terms of HMRC. It was also um, dealing with drug dealers, dealing with murderers. So it
oh,
was
geez.
quite a yeah. So a lot of people, I'm sure, listen to the podcast will listen to murder podcasts, thrillers, and whatnot. So a little bit of that sprinkled in, but it was certainly quite fast paced, especially when I clearly have transitioned to a non-contentious area of law. It's quite night and day, frankly.
Quite relaxed, I would have thought.
Do you know I nearly used the term relaxed, but certainly not relaxed,
Yeah,
especially
it's
with
just
the
different, I
recent
guess, different
changes.
stakes. It's
Yeah,
providing a legal service, like not under, yeah, the crime side of things. We've got someone that I'm trying to get on who represents individual from a crime perspective.
yeah.
And yeah, it'll be interesting to hear about that. So how long did you do that? How long were you in that world for?
So about a year and a half or so. Um, it was very interesting, very long hours, very tiring. but very rewarding, because obviously you're
Yeah,
dealing with people who are frankly often the worst and most stressful part of their lives, whether that's
I
being
bet.
from a CPS charge against them, whether that's being a professional negligence charge against them. It's a situation where you are dealing with, at the time, mostly the most vulnerable time in their lives. So it's a lot of personal waiting on you,
Yeah.
assisting the solicitors and assisting the partners, but also upon the clients themselves. So whilst I found it very sort of rewarding, it wasn't an area that I thought I could continue to do for the rest of my career.
Yeah, you're signing up to I guess if you stay in it, you're signing up to a very particular type of work, which if it's
Absolutely.
not your bag, that would be tough, I would think.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And for me personally, the reason I think I eventually moved into the non-contentious sector and obviously private wealth itself was because I enjoyed the person-to-person contact. I enjoyed having an individual as a client rather than a corporation, or rather than
Yeah, it's good, isn't
rather
it?
than the contentious element. I like being able to unpick how I can help them, how I can support them moving forward. So I've kind of taken that area that I grew and uh, got a little bit more comfortable with over time in the business crime department, and then tried to build upon that.
Was it easy to move departments? Was that something that
Yeah,
JMW facilitated quite easily, or?
yeah. So JMW, I guess a brief overview, is a full service law firm. So we cover most, if not all, areas of law, and internal movements around the team and around the department is quite usual, especially for
Yeah,
junior colleagues. And James would be quite good at facilitating that, where it's maybe a little bit more obvious that someone may sit better in a different department or may have an interest in a different area. They don't kind of stand in the way. So I've always found that quite a positive step in
it's
reality. And
good. It's good.
yeah,
It doesn't always work like that. So yeah,
no,
that is good to hear. So you move across. You're doing, as you said, non-contentious private client work. So
no.
for those who maybe it's not obvious, what is
Yeah,
that? What is private
yeah.
client work in your world?
So it depends on firm by firm, department by department, but for ourselves, it's quite a broad church.
Yeah,
So it's probably easier to advise also what I don't do fundamentally, and that's court and protection work. People who lack capacity to
yeah,
make decisions for themselves, we have a sort of a dedicated court of protection team and departments who do that. So I would generally have private clients, individuals who wish to implement wills, trusts, powers of attorney, consider inheritance tax planning, succession planning, business owners, entrepreneurs considering a business sale maybe on the horizon, and we're helping them structure that in a tax efficient manner for obviously future proofing that for further generations.
yeah.
Personal injury trusts as well. We have quite a large personal injury and clinical negligence team. So we will assist clients who have gone through that process, received an amount of money, perhaps a
Yeah.
level of quantum, generally in the 6 figures, 7 figures, and we'll help them create the structures moving forward to make sure that money lasts, make sure that they're looked after in the long term.
So
Even
when
as
you
far
say sort of set up structures,
Mhm.
what are you referring to? Like,
Yeah, so generally speaking, it would be different types of trust structures,
mm,
whereby either JMW could act as a professional trustee.
yeah,
Frankly, I guess to roll back a touch, in terms of trusts, we would have the conversation with the clients on the basis of maybe somebody else holding assets for their benefit, especially where it becomes a personal injury position.
yeah.
Or let's say a mother and father have a set sum of money, or maybe a business, and they are considering how to best protect that money and protect that wealth, protect that business for the next generation, for their children. We could help them with setting up a trust structure, a discretionary structure, perhaps, of which either funds they hold or shares in the business are placed into the trust, of which mum and dad may be trustees for the benefit of children. So that will allow them to do a little bit of inheritance tax planning themselves, but also have and retain a level of control over those assets, over those shares, of which they can continue to benefit the children in a clear, concise, and protected way.
It's such a big it's going to be such a big area. I mean, it already is, but like I'm sure you're aware, like in our world, in the sort of financial advice world,
Yeah.
like we dealt with a lot of IHT questions, sort of a lot through gifting and a lot through pensions. And with pensions, so as we're recording this in sort of summer 26,
Hmm.
we've got about 8-9 months before pensions are pulled into people's estates for inheritance
Yeah.
tax, and the whole sort of IFA financial advice profession is basically formulating what are the alternatives, what is
Yeah.
their approach to IHT in a world where pensions uh, are included in the estate, and there's knock-on
Yeah.
effects. You drag in a pension in someone's estate, and then maybe they lose their residence nil rate band. So it's going to be such a massive area for the
Yeah.
next few years. So I mean, probably you guys will get a lot more calls from people in our world saying, "How can you help?"
We already are, to be honest with you, Charlie,
I'm
and
not
it,
surprised.
it, it has been crazy over the last, I'd say, 12 months, 24 months, especially from clients who maybe traditionally may not have called a private wealth specialist, may not have considered that they have an inheritance tax problem. But we haven't, just to give an example, we have quite a lot of clients who've called up who are business owners, who have quite large pensions, and who are now looking, well, what can we do fundamentally? How can we structure our estate? How can we structure our asset base to make sure that we don't fall foul of the changes to inheritance tax, both from a business perspective and also from a pension perspective? And Charlie, you make a very fair point in relation to the residential nil rate band as well. A lot of clients who may have had, for argument's sake, under £1 million, married couple, leaving assets to children, no inheritance tax would be due. We have numerous clients now whose pensions are in the high six figures, low seven figures perhaps, who are now getting frankly decimated from a residential nil rate band perspective, each providing a level of £175,000 per person being removed. For a married couple, that's £350,000 worth of inheritance tax
Yeah.
freedom that they would have. So we're dealing a lot with clients from a preventative position. A lot of clients who are much, I guess, younger than you would imagine, who are doing IHT planning, clients even in their 30s, 40s, early 50s, rather than, I guess, the more traditional, considering it maybe 5 to 10 years out from retirement, where the time horizon is quite short. We're seeing a lot of clients at a younger age with potentially younger children considering how best to approach this.
It's a big one. Just, and I don't normally go into sort of the weeds of it. So could you just
Yeah.
explain when you lose the residence nil rate band,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
why the pensions thing is a factor, like why it's
Yeah,
changed?
yeah. I think that's a really sort of big position for quite a lot of our clients and also society at large, if I'm honest with you. So the residential no rate band, not to, I guess, get too technical, but everybody has both the nil rate band allowance for inheritance tax of £325,000 per person, which is unaffected by the size of your estate. However, I believe it's now about 7 or 8 years ago, the last Conservative
Yeah, it was
government brought in
it was
a,
a Tory government
yeah,
policy,
I,
wasn't it?
I think it was a George Osborne policy,
I think
thinking
so.
about it. Basically, everybody received an additional allowance for inheritance tax purposes called the residential no rate band, which is valued at £175,000 per person
Yeah.
and is valid whereby property has, or somebody, I guess, has equity of at least £175,000 in a residential property in which they have lived in
Yeah.
and in which they are leaving subsequent amount of equity to children and or grandchildren. Now, the relevance from a pension perspective is where somebody's estate is over the £2 million mark, the residential nil rate band starts to decrease. So for a lot of clients, married clients, clients in relationships who may have been under the £2 million allowance previously, if you add pensions, especially for a married couple between two people, that could quite easily include added an additional £500,000 perhaps,
Yeah.
which would decimate that level of allowance. And the inheritance tax consequences of that would be an additional potentially 40% on that unavailable allowance. So we're talking six figures worth of inheritance tax, sadly, for the next generations to be hit before they receive the net inheritance.
It's so, thanks. That's a really good summary. And I do feel bad. I never usually go too technical on the questions, but yeah, it's huge. Suddenly, at the moment, someone's estate is worth below 2 million. They get the full nil rate band and residence nil rate band as of April next year. Pensions get dragged into that calculation, and then they, potentially start to lose that residence nil rate band. It's a big change. It's a big change. So I'm not surprised. So you guys have seen increased inquiries, I guess, because this rule hasn't changed yet, but it is coming. But you're already seeing more questions. Is that coming direct? Is that coming direct from clients to you, or is it coming from sort of the financial advice profession? Are you getting more inquiries from us, basically?
What I would say is we've probably had three, and we were talking about this actually as a team last week, because our rates of inquiries, especially in this area, have skyrocketed, certainly over the last couple of months, if not the last year or two. But I would probably say we're receiving three different streams of increased inquiries. A third from the likes of yourselves, the financial community, who are reaching out with clients who obviously preemptively you're considering how best to assist these clients and what structuring could potentially take place, maybe with other assets they hold. Obviously, pensions are rather sticky to be able to affect, and maybe clients who have cash elsewhere, maybe clients who have pension income or ISA income, a bit more of a culmination of how we can potentially mitigate from a strategic perspective. A third of the inquiries are from previous clients of ourselves who may have implemented wills, may have implemented LPAs, may have purchased a property with JMW in the past. And they're coming to us because they've seen the news and they think, well, I probably should sense check the planning I put in place maybe a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Some clients in the early 2000s have been in touch to say, what does this mean for me?
It's interesting. So
Yeah,
they're revisiting things.
Yeah, absolutely. We always try and touch base where we can with previous clients on a sort of 3 or 5 year basis. Obviously, clients are welcome to get in touch back with us and query these questions. And I guess the last third is, and this was the most surprising, if I'm honest with you, Charlie, which was clients getting in touch with us out of the blue, whether that's via our website, whether that's it sounds quite potentially silly, but we're having quite a lot of inquiries via ChatGPT currently.
How interesting. Yeah. I mean, God, that's a whole other topic about, most people know about search engine optimization and how do you get found through Google, but yes, an increasing area is how do you get found through some of the AI platforms?
Absolutely. And we're getting some clients asking for family investment company advice, asking for succession planning, asking for conversations surrounding just inheritance tax in general, whether they have a liability, what they can put in place, what mitigation options are available. And these are clients who, when I've queried with them or touched base with them in the meeting, have said, well, if all of these recent changes hadn't occurred, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you guys. I wouldn't have had this conversation. I wouldn't have made the initial leap.
It is interesting, like, because changes are frustrating, generally speaking, but you can't help but notice that it does drive a need for the services. It's all that, on the one hand, you wish things didn't change, but on the other hand, you can't notice that it does, make us all the more valuable. I mean, just slight disclaimer, because we have gone into a little bit of detail, but obviously, we're talking in generalities, and any action that anyone takes needs to be considered with personal advice that's specific to them, which we are not giving. No. We're sort of high level chats like, that's interesting, chat GPT and stuff. Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know. I haven't noticed it too much, but I've heard people noticing that client emails and queries are getting more technical in nature, where they have been drafted by some of the AI platforms, and you see it and you're like, blimey, that's a good email. And you know what? I don't care. People write it, people don't. If it's accurate and asking good questions, then I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from my perspective, I'm always a little bit conscious when I receive an email that's potentially clearly been drafted by some generative AI on the basis of those AI platforms and ChatGPT and open source and whatnot and Claude. I always advise clients maybe consider where you're putting your personal information. We have
Yes, very
we
good
have
point.
had some clients who I have, after the event, told them and advised them maybe not to do this, who have provided us with wills and trust documents that have been, or declarations of trust, which have been prepared by AI platforms. And obviously that's including names, addresses, family details, asset bases. So I think, and I guess it may be a whole other conversation, but we are seeing more clients considering, both for the initial queries and initial inquiries, but also the creation of their own documentation, which some of the, a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, some of the documentation is interesting and some of it's very detailed. I'm yet to come across a single piece of documentation I would be happy to sign off on, and I would be happy to prepare myself. There
Yeah.
are obviously flaws within the system, and
They're
it yeah,
simultaneously amazing, and also prone to some quite egregious errors. But
absolutely.
you only spot it's easy to spot when you've been doing it for a long time, but
Yeah.
less so if you're not familiar with the topic. Yeah, it's a fascinating area for the moment. I mean, my general impression is I think
Hmm.
it will make our profession more efficient. I suspect.
Yeah.
Rather, I don't see it too much as a threat, but I guess that could change. I just think that when there's crunch times in people's lives, when there's really big moments,
Hmm.
one-off, not to be repeated, payout from work, or
Yeah.
a one-off inheritance or divorce settlement,
Absolutely.
all of these big things, like unlikely to be repeated. You're going to get it once and you need to
Hmm.
decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, I do think most people will want to seek some advice in that situation
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
professional firm that's got, regulatory approvals and,
Hmm.
you know, PI insurance and all that kind of stuff that you don't
Very
get.
true.
An ombudsman behind,
Hmm.
in our industry, you got the financial ombudsman, you got the
Yeah.
financial conduct authority, you got a regulator and an ombudsman keeping an eye on us, and there's a complaints process. And even if a firm goes out of business, there's still ways to get recourse and protection. All valuable things, which I don't know. Well, obviously the AI platforms do not have. So we'll see. Maybe it's wishful thinking.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, to be honest with you. I think a lot of clients will utilize those platforms, maybe initially to get a little bit of a steer, to get a bit of an understanding, to maybe at a base level understand more about different will structure options, maybe a little bit more about the inheritance tax position. So we do have some clients who will come with notes that are generated. And I think sometimes that can be helpful because it gives it a base level of understanding. But of course, that's only if the base level of understanding is correct.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. That's a really good summary of what you guys do. Quickly to pivot though to because I
Yeah.
know you get aside from private client network and
Mhm.
running the events in Manchester. I know you sort of were quite active in getting out there. How do you
Mhm.
find that side of work? So not the technical client facing
Yeah.
stuff, but the more new business, working with other professionals. Like when do you get other professionals involved? And how do you find that from a sort of new business point of view?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly always try and go to any events possible, professional events. I mean, if I'm honest with you, it's one of the reasons why I initially went to the private client network first event, because it seemed engaging, it seemed interesting. I had an idea of people who were also going, also within the same sphere. But me personally, I think the best way for new business, the best way to get along with people within the same industry, whether it be financial advisors, tax advisors, private banks, whoever it would be, the best way is to go to events, to meet people, to see people face to
Yeah.
face, to continue to have those touch points. I think over time, and obviously it takes time, it takes energy, it takes repeat quick conversations. It takes little, can I query this with you? Can I run this matter past you? I have a client who wants to, I don't know, set up a particular structure. Would you happy to have your details passed on, have some conversations? And I think over time, over weeks, months, and years, you do build up that rapport, you build up that professional understanding and that professional trust. And that then leads to bringing clients to those advisors, perhaps for a bit of information, a bit of a steer. Sometimes also that could be running initial meetings. So I've recently ran a few meetings with a few tax advisors in relation to setting up family investment companies. Because obviously, from our perspective, we provide no tax advice at all. We're not regulated to do so, but we are tax aware and able to provide an understandable structure for clients. Of course, we understand capital gains tax, corporation tax, income tax. You have to within the area, but understanding where your remit ends and where another advisor is required, I think is a necessity, especially in 2026 within this area and dealing with the clients that we do. I think the times when I first joined the team, whereby a lot of advisors maybe worked in a bit more of a silo capacity. I will work on this. You may need to go and get some legal advice about that. Good luck, frankly. I think that mentality is kind of shifted. I think a lot of clients are expecting maybe not quite one onboarding document, but certainly advisors who know each other, have worked with each other before, understand what the planning is going to be, and trying to get it moved forward as efficiently as possible is certainly a big driver for that, and something I've certainly noticed.
Very true. Same in our world. We're not tax advisors. We don't do tax calcs, but tax aware is probably a good thing. It basically threads through. We're simultaneously not tax advisors, but tax threads through everything that we do.
Of course it does.
So you just need to be hyper aware of what it is and where it impacts. But when it comes to the actual, this is, you have to bring in a tax advisor for sure. Particularly when there's calculations, CGT on disposal of big assets or inheritance tax. You have to bring in someone for that. Awesome. Thanks for that. That was a really interesting overview on both sides, the career side, what you do at JMW and what service you offer to clients, but also working with the other fine professionals in the private wealth space outside of law. That's been really good. Appreciate you coming on. And I need to get up to Manchester. I haven't been up for a little while. And I'll tell you what, Manchester is an amazing city. If anyone hasn't been, there's a reason Manchester gets mentioned so much, in the press and everything. I feel like the city's just flying.
It is. And if I'm honest with you, we're starting to see, to also say, I'm also down in London quite often. And I think there are parallels now between Manchester and London. We are seeing quite a lot of bigger advisory practices, bigger tax advisors, private banks, US firms, all moving and having actual offices in Manchester, fully serviced, fully rendered offices, which is fantastic. It's great for the area. I mean, I'm looking out of the window now of our office, and it's skyscrapers, it's creation of new office spaces, creation of new companies. We're actually moving ourselves because we're naturally growing to a new state-of-the-art office. So it's growing over time, and I certainly think Manchester's the place to be, even from a Scouser.
I know. I almost said it's painful.
It pains me to say.
I know.
It pains me to say, but no, it's a fantastic city, and the private client community and financial services community, whilst sufficiently sized, is still quite small. Everybody knows everybody. All of the advisors are practical, wish to obviously proceed for the benefit of the clients, and it's a nice place to work, and a nice place to network, a nice place to be able to run obviously the private client network Manchester events as well. They're always greatly attended, and it's certainly something I'd hope to move forward with and continue certainly for the long term.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It always seems like a really good group up there, and the ones I've attended have always been a lot of fun. I think that's a great point to leave it on. Just to say thanks again. Much appreciate you coming on, and hopefully see you at a Manchester event or a London event for that matter soon.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Charlie, for the invite, and I hope everyone's found the chat interesting. And obviously, if there's anything we can assist with, more than happy to have an initial chat.
Your details will be in the show notes, as they say. So cool. Thanks. See you soon.
Thanks, Charlie. Bye.